So this is the good. We're right on track because this is going to take a little bit. So maybe get yourself another cup of coffee. But this is the financial focus portion of our weekly webinar, and during this portion, we're going to talk about gifting strategies. So as I mentioned at the top of the weekly webinar, this came about from an email I received from a longtime listener. So someone who's been with us since 2019, attended a class, and then probably jumped on. We started these webinars in the spring of 2020, but he wrote to me that he's getting advice from different advisors, and he had this idea of gifting to his children. I'm assuming appreciated stock, and potentially gifting them the stock, and they pay at a lower capital gains rate. So I'm going to explain that to you in a little more detail, but that's a very, very common strategy. So it's good that Dan is thinking about this. Very, very common strategy. And it led me to think, well, geez, it probably makes sense to talk about some of these gifting strategies with y'all. So we're going to do that right now. So let me share my screen with you. So first and foremost, before you get into gifting, make sure you're good. Make sure that your needs are taken care of. We can really get caught up sometimes in helping our children, helping our friends, but make sure that your needs are taken care of. And how do you do that? Well, of course, you want to work through a financial plan. And you want to review that plan every year, year over year, review that plan. There's no reason not to. But so you make sure your needs are taken care of, and that's retirement funding. So if you're looking at retirement, if you're planning for retirement, if you're in retirement, of course, your basic expenses, you really have to shake that tree to make sure that you're identifying those basic expenses. And we have a video that we'll include in the description here that the number one retirement planning mistake is not knowing your expenses. So make sure that your retirement funding is taken care of. Make sure your additional expenses are taken care of. What could those additional expenses be? Well, they could be just about anything, but it could be, because some people come to us and say, well, I want to spend $10,000 a month. And we say, does that $10,000 a month include fun? And sometimes they say yes. And sometimes they say, now this is just when we're having a preliminary conversation before we dig into financial planning, because we clearly identify those expenses in financial planning. But sometimes people say, oh no, it doesn't include fun. It doesn't include going out to dinner. It doesn't include travel. It doesn't, I didn't think about that. Add another $25,000 a year for travel, or add another $400 a month for dining out. So you want to make sure those additional expenses are in there. Additional expenses could also mean, well, I'm going to have to put a new roof on the house, and that's going to be $15,000. Or I'm going to need a new car, and it's really hard to buy a new car these days for under $50,000. I can't even believe I'm saying that, but under $50,000, you might be able to find something for $35,000. But you got to think about these things, those additional expenses, and they should be laid out in your plan. Don't forget about healthcare costs. So this is easy to kind of just stick away in the back of our mind and say, I know this thing is out there, those healthcare costs, but and especially long-term care, but maybe I won't need that, or I'm just going to block that off. Well, if you've, as a retiree, you've got more than a 70% chance that if you're married, that one of you is going to need long-term care in the future. So you've got to get that taken care of. You've got to at least plan for that potential issue. The people who are acutely aware of this are anybody in the healthcare industry. Certainly folks that work in medicine at all understand the need for long-term care funding, like managing that risk, or someone who's been through it themselves with their parents or a loved one. So don't wait for something to affect you directly. Just hear me that this is something you need to plan for. So make sure your needs are taken care of first. Now let's talk about this gift tax exclusion, because people often say to me, well, I'm going to gift. I'm going to just go to our handy dandy chart here. So you can download this chart from our website. You go from our homepage to the Slott corner. There's a drop down. That's Ed Slott. It's not the football slot corner. That's Ed Slott. You drop down and you choose the Ed Slott, the slot corner, and then scroll down, and you'll see where you can access these charts. But you'll see here, this annual gift tax exclusion is $19,000. So people often talk about that. Well, I can give $19,000 to whomever I want, and you can. Now, it doesn't mean, if you go over that, it doesn't mean that you have to pay tax on that. It doesn't mean that the people who receive it pay tax. If I gifted all of you on this video, listening to this video right now, $19,000, I wouldn't pay tax on that, and you wouldn't pay tax on it. I've already paid tax on that money. The only reason I would pay tax on that money is if I took it out of an IRA and then paid, or something that's tax deferred, and then paid tax, or then gifted it to you. But the reason that this gift tax exclusion exists, and the reason that it's sitting here under this estate tax exemption, is if you go over this $19,000, then you have to file a gift tax form, and it reduces the exemption amount. Now, if you can't see that, I just want to share with you that exemption amount is nearly $14 million. So there's plenty of people out there with $14 million. But there's not an overwhelming amount, and that's per person. So if you're married, well, that's nearly $28 million. So what happens if you gift $20,000 instead of $19,000? Well, then you have to file a gift tax return, and it reduces your $13,990,000 exclusion. We got to come over here, $9,000 by $1,000. So now you're at $13,989,000 is your exclusion. That's really simply how it works. So if you want to gift more, you may consider it. If you want to stay within this threshold, that's fine too, this $19,000. Because if you're married, you have spouse 1 and spouse 2. Well, you can both gift $19,000. And if you have 4 kids, for example, well, you can gift $19,000 times 2 to each one of your children. And if you really want to be generous, if your children are married, you can gift to not only the children, but to the spouses. And you could do $19,000 each. So you can get creative with the gifting, staying over this gift tax threshold. But hey, if you had $6 million, for an example, and you wanted to just gift $1 million to one of your children, let's just say, let's make it a little more generous. If you had $10 million and you wanted to gift $1 million to each of your children, well, you could do that. What it would do, so it would leave you $6 million. Your gift, and each one of your kids gets $1 million. Now you've gone over that times 4. You've gone over that gift tax exclusion, and now you've got to reduce your exemption by $4 million, right? So now your new exemption is $9,990,000 times 2, right? If you're married. So that's simply, I hope that makes sense. That's how that gift tax exclusion works. All right, so we talked about gift tax exclusion. Now we're going to break this down. So remember our buckets and think about it, because you're going to see here. We got taxable, tax deferred, and tax advantaged or tax free. The regulators make us say tax advantaged. So your taxable bucket, what lives in here is anything that you get those annual 1099s on, or for, or sometimes K1s, and that doesn't have an R after it. So you get these 1099s for interest, capital gains, dividends, things like that, and you pay tax on that. So every year you pay tax on distributions that come out of there, or even capital gains that are in there, or interest. Even if it's reinvested, you still pay tax on it. And this could be your standard brokerage accounts, your bank accounts, CDs, money markets, all of that can be in that. You know, stocks, bonds, cash, whatever is in there, but it produces a 1099. So let's just talk about gifting from the taxable buckets. So how could you gift during your lifetime? Well, you could just take cash. If you want to gift, let's stay under the $19,000 threshold. So if you've got $19,000 sitting here in cash, and you want to just give that to your kids. I'm going to say, you got one child. You want to just give that $19,000 to your one child. Done. Easy. You can do that. But what about appreciated assets? So what some people will do is they'll say, okay, well, I have, let's just stick with the $19,000. I have $19,000 in appreciated stock in ABC stock company. And I only paid $5,000 for this. So they'll say, well, I want to gift $19,000 to my child. I don't have the cash to do that. I'm going to sell this ABC stock and then gift the $19,000 that's remaining in cash to my child. Now, what Dan appropriately said in his email is, well, wait a minute. There are two issues here. First of all, I now have $14,000 in gains, capital gains, that I have to pay. So let's go back to the orange chart and let's look at capital gains. So there are 3 capital gains rates: 0, 15, and 20. Well, let's say that you're in the 15% bracket. Now that could be, there is a plus 3.8% surcharge on each one of these brackets. So it could be 0, 18.3, or 18.8, or 23.8. And that, you see that 3.8% Medicare surtax on invested income. So anybody that if a single filer, if your modified adjusted gross income is greater than $200,000, or if for married filing joint filers, it's over $250,000, then you pay this additional 3.8% Medicare surtax. That's from the Affordable Care Act. So you might be in this 15.8% and maybe even 18.8%. But your kids might just be at 15%. So if they're at a potentially lower capital gains rate, there might be a better way to do that. So they also could be at 0. What if your kids are married and jointly they're not, their modified adjusted gross income is less than $96,700. And these are there's an effective rate also. So you pay just on income over 96,701 do you pay 15%. But anyway, so it could be at 0 for your children or 15%. So if they have less of a capital gains rate than you, it may make sense, instead of liquidating and you paying the capital gains rate, and let's say you're at 18.8%, it might make sense for you to gift those shares of that ABC stock directly to your child's, right? So you gift shares instead of stock. So how do you do that? I'll get to that in a second. You gift shares of the ABC stock and they pay 0 or 15% instead of your 18.8%. Even if their capital gains rate is 15% as opposed to 18.8%, it's still a savings to them. But many times when you're gifting it to your kids, you might be able to get to 0 or have a lower effective capital gains rate. I hope that makes sense. So how do you do this operationally? If they don't have an investment account, like a brokerage account, you open one up for them. You deposit the shares. You gift the shares into their investment account in their name. And your name shouldn't really be on that, because that'll kind of negate the whole reason for it. But you put it in their name, and then they liquidate it and pay the capital gains tax. So that's one way to transfer, to gift appreciated assets. So you could go from, instead of paying at a high 23.8% to a low of 0% on capital gains. So you could liquidate and gift. You could gift in kind. Again, the potentially lower capital gains rates. You could also fund life insurance with it, right? So that's a strategy we use with people too, because if we go over here to the tax advantage bucket, there are 2 things that are truly tax-free or tax advantage, and that's anything Roth and properly structured cash value of life insurance. Some people will say, okay, well, I'm going to gift you, go back to cash, for example, $19,000, but instead of me giving it to you directly, I'm going to purchase a life insurance policy for you. And we're going to put it into there, and then it can grow. You'll have a death benefit, all the benefits you've heard me talk about life insurance. So that's a possibility too. Something to consider. It may not be appropriate for you or your kids, but it may. So you can liquidate and gift. You can fund life insurance. You can gift in kind. So pros and cons of gifting in kind is your kids may have a higher capital gains rate than you, right? You might be at a 15% rate, and your kids could be at a 23.8%. So it doesn't always make sense. You want to consider it. And any gifting, by the way, you have no control. So if you do an outright gift, if I gift each one of you $19,000, I'm not doing that. But if I gift each one of you listening today $19,000, you have no control. And for those of you that are listening to the podcast, I'm drawing some things out on the whiteboard. I'm trying my best to explain it as we go, but if you want to, you can pop over to the YouTube video. But again, you have no control if you gift, whether it's $1 million or $19,000, any of it. It's gone. The people you gift it to, whether it's your kids or anybody else, they now can do whatever they want with it. They also have creditor risk. So the next item to pay attention to is creditor risk. When you're gifting your money to anybody else, and it now sits in their accounts for their use, well, if they get in a car accident, if they get sued, if they get divorced, if they, there's all these, if this happens, then those funds are subject to the claims of creditors or an ex-spouse. So just consider that. So if you have somebody who has maybe some financial issues, you may want to do things a little differently, maybe pay things for them directly. I don't know. But it's something to consider. Just be aware of it, because once you gift it, you have no control, and then it is subject to creditor risk if it's in somebody else's name. So one of the ways you can handle that is using a trust. If you're worried about control, if you're worried about creditor risk, you can use a trust. So there's a lot of different variations of trust. Generally, we're going to just talk about a few. We're going to talk about a revocable trust. So a revocable trust is a trust that you set up. You are the you control the trust. It's revocable. You can change it at any time. So it's typically a trust titled in your name, with the trust date, and you can act as the trustee or name somebody else as the trustee, and you use your own Social Security number. The tax, any income flows through to you, and that can be beneficial as well. We'll come back to that in a second, but the tax. But that's a revocable trust. So that's just for managing assets like while you're still alive. And then there's really there's no way to gift within that revocable trust. Now, an irrevocable trust allows for a gift to somebody else as a beneficiary. So if you wanted to have, let's just say you have 4 children again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you wanted to gift your children each, let's just stay with the $19,000. And there's no, you can gift more than $19,000. I want you to be clear about that, but we're just staying with the $19,000. If you wanted to gift each child $19,000 a year, but you wanted to put some limitations on when they can access it, maybe your kids are still young, but you want to start building that up, or maybe they're in their 20s or 30s, but you're just not ready to let them have the funds yet during your lifetime. Well, you can gift into this irrevocable trust that comes out of your pool of money, right? You're out of your estate, and that's why you've got to make sure that your needs are taken care of. And in the trust, you gift those funds. You can have somebody invest those funds. They can grow, and then they can be paid out even while you're alive to your beneficiaries, however you want. There is also some creditor protection with trusts. So you definitely want to review this with an estate attorney with these concerns, but there are some creditor protection with trusts, and certainly you have some controls about how that money's spent. So that is a revocable trust compared to an irrevocable trust. Now let's talk about this tax issue between the two. So back to our charts here. So just remember this, that a revocable trust flows through to your tax ID number, right? Your Social Security number. So any tax that's generated is going to fall into these marginal tax rates. And it just gets added on top of whatever income you have. So I just want you to pay attention to something here. So let's look at the highest marginal tax rate for individuals or married filing jointly. That's good. Let's just focus on married filing jointly. So you don't hit the 37% bracket today in 2025 until you're over $751,000 in income. So $751,000 in income or below, you're not yet at the highest tax rate. Now let's look at trust tax rates. The marginal rates look similar, 10, 24, 35, 37, but take a look at that. Anything over, if the funds are held in an irrevocable trust, right? So a revocable trust processes through to you. An irrevocable trust, if it maintains any income that's produced and isn't passed out to beneficiaries, you get a 37% tax rate at only $15,650 worth of income. And look at the capital gains rates, right? So anything 20% on any capital gains of $15,900. So again, these are realized capital gains, but so you can see where while we're still capital gains 0, 15, and 20%, same as personal. These income levels trigger these higher rates at much lower levels if you're talking about taxes inside of trusts and also estates. So pay attention to that when you're considering these gifting strategies. Okay. Let's come back. All right, so there's also this ILIT. So what is an ILIT? An ILIT is a irrevocable life insurance trust. Remember this scheme here that we talked about, where you're putting, you're sending $19,000, you're gifting it to your kids directly into a life insurance policy, and it grows. Well, if you wanted that life insurance policy now to be owned inside of a trust, then what you do is you gift it to the kids. It goes to directly into the life insurance inside of the trust, and then you have the trustee has to supply a letter. It's called a crummy letter that basically says to each one of the beneficiaries of the trust or the gift. Let's say there's 4 of them, so right, 19 times 4. You want to notify your kids, basically saying there's $19,000 I'm depositing into the trust. It's available for you to use it today if you want it, but instead we're going to put it into the life insurance, and then it's going to grow and you'll get the benefit of the life insurance. Now that's if the life insurance is in your name. You can also, we'll talk about other ways to structure it in a second, but you can have it in an irrevocable life insurance trust or an ILIT. Now, I'm just checking time. So next is DAF, which is there you go, donor advised fund. So these are all during lifetime. Holy cow, we're getting really. So I just did, I grabbed from Investopedia, one of my favorite resources for you folks. Now let's read along here. What is a donor advised fund? A donor advised fund is a private account created to manage and distribute charitable donations on behalf of an organization, family, or individual. Donor advised funds can democratize philanthropy by aggregating the contribution of multiple donors, thus multiplying their impact on worthy causes. Donor advised funds also have abundant tax advantages. So we'll just grab those real quick. So the tax advantages are up to 60% of the adjusted gross income and can hold funds indefinitely. It could also be 30%, so that's for cash, 30% for appreciated stock or securities. So what is a donor advised fund? It's a fund you set up where you distribute money to charity over time, but you maintain those control of those funds. So that's another way to gift, certainly, to charity. All right, so that is your taxable accounts, and that is during lifetime. Now, after death, where'd we go? There we go. After death. So you've got a couple good things here. So if you say, instead of gifting your money to your kids during lifetime or whoever you want to gift it to, let's use that ABC stock. I think that the ABC stock here had $14,000 worth of gains. Remember, ABC stock you bought for $5,000, and it's grown to $19,000. So there's plus $14,000 worth of gains. So if you sell it during your lifetime or pass it or gift it to your kids, they keep this. This is called cost basis. So they keep this cost basis. of $5,000. So either you sell it, you realize the gains, or your kids sell it, they realize the gains, maybe at a lower tax rate. But if you wait until you die under the current tax rules, what happens is, let's just say today is your date of death. I'm sorry to tell you, 4/2/2025, you're no longer here. And if the stock is now valued at $19,000, what happens is you get a date of death valuation. And now your basis goes to $19,000. So if you want to pass it to your kids after you pass, well, now they get the stepped up basis of $19,000. And if they sell it before it grows at all, they don't pay any tax on that. So that is an after death step up in cost basis. That's how that works. And that's used by people all the time. You know, we're using a small example here of $14,000, but there's million people that pass millions of dollars of appreciated stock, and not a single bit of it is taxed from a capital gains point of view. And then you have a testamentary trust. So what we talked about here earlier with the irrevocable trust is setting up a trust during your lifetime, funding it, and the beneficiaries can receive money from that. A testamentary trust is built into your will typically, and it says, okay, when I die, this happens. This amount of money goes into a trust for these beneficiaries, and you can control that money even when you're no longer here. And there could be some good reasons for that control. Creditor protection, maybe you're concerned how your heirs are going to spend that money, whatever your reason. So the will triggers the formation of the trust. So that's, oh my goodness, that's all just taxable gifting. Now we move to tax deferred. So what are tax deferred dollars? Well, your traditional IRAs, your 401ks, etc. Any retirement accounts. How can you gift from there? Well, during lifetime, gifting is limited. You really can't, during your lifetime, gift from your tax deferred accounts. The only way that you can do that is to take a distribution, pay tax, and gift the remaining amount. You can't gift shares of your IRA to somebody, not even your spouse. The only exception is charitable donations. So after currently age 70 and a half, after age 70 and a half, you can do what are called qualified charitable distributions. So we talked about this during one of the letters, the mailbag letters during our webinar. After age 70 and a half, you can contribute. This year, I think it's $108,000. It's adjusted for inflation. Somebody will fact check me on that. But $108,000 per person from your IRAs directly to a charity without paying any tax. That's a qualified charitable distribution. That's what QCD means. So that's the only way of not paying tax on a gift, but the gift has to be to a charity. Yes, people get creative with personal foundations, things like that, but it's got to be a qualified charity by the IRS. Now, how about after death? Well, beneficiary designations are the only way really to get your money to who you want it to go to. So because you've heard me talk about this, you have to check those beneficiary designations every single year. You should check those beneficiary designations every single year, and you should maintain a copy of it. There are many considerations depending on when IRAs are inherited and who inherits them. So I can't go into that today because it's a whole volume. It would actually take a couple of videos at this point because the laws and the rules and regulations get more and more complex every year, it seems like. And that's where we get most of our questions about inherited IRAs. But beneficiary designations are very, very important. Can you name a trust as a beneficiary? Absolutely. And if that's something you're considering, you should definitely talk to a qualified financial planner and a qualified estate attorney. Now, what about tax advantaged accounts? Remember, just two real tax advantage accounts, anything Roth and properly structured cash value life insurance. So during your lifetime, Roth IRAs, 401ks, etc. Again, gifting limitations. You would have to distribute that money. Now, you don't pay tax on it if it's a qualified distribution from your Roth. But why would you do that? You're probably better off leaving that to your heirs. Now, if everybody's different, everybody's needs and issues are different. If that's all the money you have and you really want to gift your child a new house, new car, help them in some way, then I guess it could make sense. But I think there's few reasons for that. Now, after death of your Roth IRA, again, beneficiary designations. Make sure your beneficiary designations are set up correctly. They're named who you want specifically to go to. Don't be general about it. You want to name your beneficiaries specifically. Okay, that's your tax advantage accounts. So I jumped right into that, and we're going a little over. That's okay. So tax advantage, we talked about only Roth and cash value of life insurance. So the other part of it is during your lifetime, cash value of life insurance. Either the gift or, and I don't know if these are real words, but gift or giftee can be the insured. So the gift or as insured is kind of that, I'm funding this for you. I'm giving you $19,000. It's going to be, the life insurance is going to be on my life. And the $19,000 that I'm putting every year is going to be worth much more than that. It's going to be tax-free as a death benefit when I'm no longer here. And that could be done inside of a trust or outside of a trust, either way. Or you could say, I talked to a client about this. Listen, my daughter wants insurance. What if I paid her premium and we build it up that way instead of just giving her let's just use $19,000 again. Just instead of giving her $19,000 a year, why don't I gift it to her for the express purposes of funding this life insurance in her name, so that policy can potentially grow. It'll be beneficial to her and her heirs if she needs it for long-term care or a death benefit or potentially taking money out to spend during retirement. So you can structure it many different ways. The funds can come from gifts in an irrevocable life insurance trust, or outside of that irrevocable life insurance trust could fund a policy for yourself or for your giftee, if that's a word. You could take advantage of low or zero capital gains while transferring to a tax efficient strategy. So go back, you can layer these gifting strategies. I could say, I'm gifting $19,000 a year to my 18-year-old daughter who has almost zero income, and I'm gifting her appreciated stock. Let's say I have a bunch of, I'm going to use a generic one, ABC company stock with a lot of gains that I would be taxed at a high rate, capital gains rate, but she would be taxed at a zero capital gains rate. So I gift her $19,000 of that stock right now. She sells it in her own account. I gift the stock, not the cash. She sells it in her own account. She pays no tax on that, deposits it into the life insurance policy. That money's never going to be taxed again as long as it stays properly structured. So now you've avoided that tax altogether. You can do that. You can layer these strategies. After death, from a life insurance policy, the beneficiary receives a death benefit through trust or direct, depending on structure, or a giftee. If you're funding a policy for that giftee, they continue with their own policy during their lifetime if giftee is the insured. Whew. So that was a lot. And believe it or not, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I wanted to give you an overview. Look at this. There's a lot of stuff going on here. I wanted to give you an overview of some things you could be thinking about when you're thinking about gifting structures. So I appreciate Dan for this inspiration because, these are the things we think about as planners. When someone says, well, I'd really like to gift money to my kids, we don't just think, okay, well, how much can they do and where should it be coming from? We start going through all these potential possibilities, and the flow charts start happening in my mind. So I want you to start thinking of that way too. Remember, none of this is advice. None of this, I hope you're not taking this. This is exactly what I should do. This is education. These are things that should spur that question. And if you have questions, you can reach out to us at questions@attleborowealth.com. That's questions@attleborowealth.com. If you want to schedule time with us, you can do so. There's a link in this video or in the podcast description, and you can schedule time there, or you can reach out to us at questions@attleborowealth.com, and someone will get back to you. But I hope this inspires you. I hope this, opens your mind a little bit about things that you can do for yourself and for your heirs. Tom, I appreciate your comments. I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Take care.